Most people believe they would know if someone was manipulating them. They believe it would feel obvious, uncomfortable, wrong. But that's exactly what makes manipulation so dangerous. It rarely feels like manipulation when it's happening. It feels like love. It feels like concern. Sometimes it even feels like your own thoughts. The most skilled manipulators in your life are not the ones who make you feel controlled. They are the ones who make you feel understood while quietly building a cage around everything you think and feel and decide. Psychology has a name for this. It's called covert manipulation. And unlike open aggression or obvious control, covert manipulation works precisely because it stays invisible. The moment you label something manipulation, you can protect yourself from it. But most people never get to that moment. They just feel vaguely anxious, vaguely small, vaguely like they're always doing something wrong. And they never know why. This video is about that feeling. Because once you understand these 5 behaviors, really understand them, you will start seeing certain people in your life very differently. And that clarity, as uncomfortable as it might feel at first, is the beginning of your protection. 1. They make you feel deeply understood right before they ask for something. Healthy relationships build understanding slowly, over time, through shared experience, through conflict, through the ordinary rhythm of 2 people learning each other. But manipulation doesn't have time for that. One of the most recognizable patterns of a skilled manipulator is what psychologists call accelerated intimacy. They move fast. They make you feel seen in ways that other people never have. They seem to understand your pain, your fears, your history almost immediately. It feels extraordinary. It feels rare. You find yourself thinking, finally, someone who gets me. And then, almost without noticing the transition, a request arrives, a favor, a boundary pushed, a decision they need you to make in their favor. And because of how deeply understood you felt moments before, saying no feels almost ungrateful, almost cruel. This is not an accident. Psychologists call this the reciprocity trap. When someone gives us something emotional, understanding, validation, connection, our brain registers a debt. We feel we owe them, and they know it. Someone who genuinely cares about you builds understanding without a hidden agenda behind it. They listen because they want to know you, not because knowing you gives them leverage. The difference is invisible in the moment, but it becomes clear over time. Real connection never leaves you feeling like you owe something. 2. They rewrite history and make you question your own memory. You remember the conversation clearly. You remember what was said, what was promised, how it made you feel, and then they tell you it never happened, or it happened differently, or you misunderstood, or you're being too sensitive again. Over time, something dangerous begins to happen. You stop trusting your own memory. You start double-checking yourself before saying anything. You begin to wonder if your perception of reality is simply wrong. Psychologists call this gaslighting, and it is one of the most psychologically damaging forms of manipulation that exists, not because of what it takes from you, but because of what it replaces it with. Doubt. Constant, exhausting, corrosive self-doubt. Gaslighting doesn't require dramatic confrontations. It can happen in small, quiet moments. You bring up something that hurt you. They sigh. They say you always do this. They remind you of a time you were wrong about something else entirely. And slowly, without a single raised voice, they make the conversation about your reliability as a witness to your own life. People who genuinely care about you take your memory seriously. They don't always agree with your interpretation, but they never make you feel like your experience is the problem, because someone who respects you understands something simple. Your reality deserves to be heard, even when it's inconvenient for them. 3. They punish you for having needs, but never directly. This is the one most people miss, because it doesn't look like punishment. It looks like mood. It looks like distance. It looks like a quiet coldness that descends without explanation whenever you ask for something, set a limit, or simply exist in a way that doesn't center them. You ask for more time together. Suddenly they seem distracted, slightly irritated, not openly, just enough for you to feel it. You express a concern. They don't argue, they just go quiet. And that quiet feels heavier than any argument ever could. You set a boundary. They don't challenge it directly. They simply become less available, less warm, less present, until you find yourself wondering if you were wrong to have needs at all. Psychologists describe this pattern as intermittent emotional withdrawal. It operates on the same psychological principle as variable reinforcement, the same mechanism that makes gambling addictive. Warmth arrives unpredictably, coldness arrives without explanation, and your nervous system becomes locked in a constant state of trying to get back to the warmth. You stop asking for things, you shrink your needs down to almost nothing. You tell yourself you're being low maintenance, but what's actually happening is that you've been trained, quietly, gradually, without a single direct conversation, to need less so that they can give less. Someone who truly values you doesn't make your needs feel like a burden. They don't punish your humanness with silence. Even when they can't meet a need, they say so, clearly, without making you feel small for having it, because emotional maturity doesn't disappear when it becomes inconvenient. 4. They collect your vulnerabilities and file them away. In every meaningful connection, there are moments of openness. You share something you've never told anyone, a fear you carry, a failure that still stings, a wound from your past that never fully healed. These moments are necessary. They're how real trust is built. But in certain relationships, something shifts. You notice it first in an argument, something you shared in a private, vulnerable moment, something you trusted them with gets referenced, not directly used as an attack, just mentioned, just present, just enough to remind you that they know. Psychologists call this the weaponization of vulnerability, and it is particularly insidious because it doesn't always feel like an attack. Sometimes it feels like they're just being honest. Sometimes it feels like they're just reminding you of who you are. But the effect is always the same. You become more careful, more guarded. You share less. Not because the relationship has grown, but because you've learned, at a level below conscious thought, that your openness has a cost. People who genuinely care about you treat what you share like something fragile and precious, even in conflict, even when they're hurt, even when they're angry. Because real love understands something that manipulation never will. Just because you have access to someone's wounds does not mean you are entitled to touch them. 5. They celebrate your failures more than your growth. This one is subtle, and it might be the most painful one on this list, because it often comes from people who appear to be in your corner, people who say they want the best for you, people who are always there, especially when things fall apart. Notice how certain people in your life respond when you fail versus when you succeed. When something goes wrong, they appear immediately, full of comfort, full of time, full of presence. It feels like care. But pay attention to what arrives with it. subtle reminders of when they warned you, gentle suggestions that maybe you'd aimed too high, questions that position your failure as confirmation of something they always quietly believed about you. And then notice what happens when something goes right. The enthusiasm is slower. The congratulations feel measured. There's a pause before they respond to your good news, a pause that carries something inside it. And sometimes, quietly, they find something to diminish, a reason the success might not last, a way to reframe your win as something smaller than it felt. Psychologists describe this as envy-driven undermining. And it is particularly hard to identify because it wears the costume of friendship. They are there for your worst moments, but they subtly shrink your best ones. Someone who genuinely cares about you is more excited about your growth than your collapse. They want to see you expand. They want your success to be real and big and lasting, because people who truly love you are not in competition with your potential. Manipulation rarely announces itself. It doesn't arrive with obvious warning signs or clear intentions. It arrives slowly, quietly, in the language of care, concern, and connection. And that is precisely why understanding these 5 patterns matters. Not to make you paranoid, not to make you distrust everyone around you, but to give you something powerful, a language for what you've been feeling, a framework for what you've been experiencing, a name for the quiet discomfort that never seemed to have one. Once you can name something, you can see it clearly. And once you can see it clearly, it loses its power over you. Not everyone in your life who has done one of these things is a deliberate manipulator. People are complicated. People carry damage. People sometimes hurt others without fully understanding what they're doing. But some people know exactly what they're doing, and the most important thing you can give yourself is the ability to tell the difference. Your peace is not negotiable. Your reality is not up for debate, and the people who truly deserve space in your life are the ones who make you feel more like yourself, not less.